Morning, Trap Talk listeners. Zach Nannini here with some more thoughts from the road. This week, I've been thinking a lot about point of impact, and I've been thinking a lot about adjustable ribs. Had a few people ask some questions. First thing I think we need to start with is, if we're talking about point of impact, I think that's a different need for every shooter based on the way they swing the gun. So, first of all, the faster you swing the gun, the less point of impact you're probably going to need. The slower you swing the gun, the higher the point of impact you're probably going to need. And for anyone that doesn't know what point of impact is, it's just how high the gun shoots above the point of reference or above the point of bead. So if I say 100% high gun, that means 100% of my pellets are shooting on top of my bead when I'm aiming in a stationary target like a patterning board. The other thing that I think is really important is that you're not patterning the gun first. I think the best way to do this is go, to a trap field and set a target on a straightaway on post 3. And I think going to the 27-yard line probably makes the most sense if you're a 27-yard shooter, and then just setting the gun to a point to where you're getting a smoke ball, and you're getting a really good smoke ball, and you're watching the target dissolve from the front edge. Because I think a lot of people are not using the whole pattern. An example of this is if you're breaking and you're hitting the bottom, you're hitting the target with the top 10 or 15 or 20% of your pattern, you're letting all of those pellets go to waste. So ideally, if you can take the pattern and have that target intersect with the center or even the bottom third of the pattern, then the target's going to run into it like a meat grinder. So when you're dealing with fixed rib guns, if you're adjusting the comb in the back, I personally feel comfortable with having a stacked figure 8 picture. That's what my eyes like. But if you're going to raise the comb and you're going to put space in between the beads, it really doesn't do any good if you're still pointing with the gun. So, if you're looking off the tip of the gun, you're looking above the gun, you're looking at the target, well then as you raise the comb, you're going to get a little bit more point of impact out of the gun. But if you're still looking down towards the rib or down towards that intersection, you're aiming off the end of the bead, well then I don't know how much the point of impact is really going to change from a reference point because of the angle of your eye. So it's one of those things where you might be better off getting barrel work done, or even, I've heard of success with bending barrels. Not that I recommend that, but a flat rib gun truly is designed to shoot where it is set. So it's really hard to get a lot of change in that environment. Now, if we're talking about adjustable rib guns like a Krieghoff, where it hinges on the front, not on the back, basically a fixed position in the back of the rib, the front goes up and down, you really have to remember that the back needs to be adjusted with the front. So if you've got that rib jacked all the way up in its flattest position, and remember, the higher the rib is away from the end of the barrel, the higher it's rolled up, the lower the gun perceivedly is going to shoot, right? Because you're pushing the barrel down, you're pushing the rib up, you're creating gap. If you've got the beads perfectly stacked with your comb setting on the gun's flattest adjustable rib position, and you start to turn that wheel and bring that front of that rib down closer to the barrel, creating elevation, kicking the pattern up, if you're not bringing washers in the back of the comb up in correlation with the amount that you went down, you're not changing anything. And if anything, you're going to be looking behind the rib. So if you want to test this theory and you've got an adjustable rib gun, get the ribs and the bead stacked on its flat position, and then start turning that wheel down, turning that wheel down, turning that wheel down. What you'll see is the beads will become more blended. They will become more stacked, and you'll almost be behind the gun, right? So if you're not jacking that back up in order to align those sights, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And in, like the Perazzi, that one moves the front and the back of the rib. I really like that system where they're both moving. And I think you get the most amount of movement there with an adjustable rib when you have 2 points of movement front to back. If you want to really crank it. That being said, if you move those settings and you're not adjusting the rib, you're not going to get what you want. So I think a lot of people don't really know about the adjustability of their adjustable rib guns. I think that's something that you need to pay attention to, because people usually, even if they're getting an adjustable rib gun, they just take it out of the box and they start shooting it. And I'm also a big fan of making all the barrels shoot in and around the same place. Now, you might have a different thought of opinion on that, but I feel like if you have, 70, 30, 80, 20, 100% pattern, you're comfortable with that. Well, then why would you want your over-under to be 60, 40 and your single barrel to be 100% high? That's just my opinion. Not that it's really gold, but I think people are going to be better off shooting the same type of point of impact because they're going to get used to it in all the different games versus shooting different points of impact at everything. Everyone's different, obviously, and regard the slower you move the gun, the more point of impact I think you're going to need. I've always heard from a lot of my mentors and coaches that as you get older, your eyes start to slow down, your body starts to slow down. You're going to go up and higher with the point of impact because you're not driving as aggressively into the target, where you've got some of these young kids that they're shooting 60-40 guns, and based on their gun speed, they tell me that they're still at 6 o'clock on the target when they're driving into it. That's the reference point they see. Now, there's also people that are shooting guns that are 25, 30 inches high, like Gary Sherrod, who swears to God that he's, never really floating the target. He's just coming right into it, just right to the same 6 o'clock edge. Well, that has to do with the speed, right? If you've got more gun speed, that's going to solve a lot of issues for the point of impact. If you're really smooth and deliberate, you're going to need more point of impact. And I think of Harlan, and I've watched him shoot, and his barrel is so smooth, and he's just left to right looking really beautiful, and that's ideal. But the problem is you really need to crank that gun up. So most of those guys that are making those tight little moves, I see them shooting 100, 120, 150% high guns, where you've got your drivers that are just pushing in and driving into that target with a little bit of a flatter plane. So just some food for thought. I appreciate you guys asking questions. I really enjoy thinking about this stuff, especially while I'm working on my own game right now, trying to figure out what's right for this new stock that I'm doing. And we're having fun, so we'll catch you soon.